Welcome. You're tuned into Life is a Sacred Journey. Every week, we bring a new perspective to aging and caregiving. Here is your host, Michelle Pope.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the virtual neighborhood of Life is a Sacred Journey. It is my honor to be with you this morning. We're going to have a great conversation with Elizabeth Miller from Happy Healthy Caregiver. But I'm going to give you a little bit of information before I bring her out of the virtual green room. I want to thank all of you for your notes this week. I am recovering. It has been a hard week. I lost 3 teeth and had bone grafts and things put in. So I still have a little bit of swelling here and a little bit of swelling here, but I'm on the mend. And so thank you so much for your well wishes, for your prayers, for your meditations, and just for lifting me up. A little bit more work to go, but we're on the road there. And I'm going to lose a lot of weight because I'm on a liquid diet for 7 days. So welcome to Life is a Sacred Journey. Hit that share button. Let somebody else know that we have started this conversation this morning. And this morning, we're going to talk about happy, healthy caregiving. But before we do that, and before we bring our guest on this morning, I want to give you a few facts about caregiving, because as we continue to, all of us, age in place, we may become a caregiver if we haven't already, but there are so many things that happen to caregivers. And so how does a caregiver find happiness when there's so many struggles to the caregiving story that happen financially, all of that? But here are some facts. First of all, for vocabulary and for us to have a level playing field, formal caregivers are paid. Those are your CNAs, the folks that are in your assisted living, nursing homes, places of that nature. Informal are you, meaning the you caregivers that are caring for a parent, a child, a neighbor, a friend, a spouse. So paid caregivers are formal, unpaid is informal. There's about 43.5 million, and I know this number is outdated, unpaid caregivers out there in the United States. 82% of them care for an adult, whether it be a parent, loved one, spouse. 15% care for 2 adults. So that means mom and dad, or 2 people that are in their family. There's $217.7 billion that are just spent on the one caregiver. But then when you look at the whole picture of caregiving, it's about 470 billion. And I think it's more than that now. 65% are women. 9% self-identify as coming from the LGBTQ plus community, and 3 million of our LGBTQ plus citizens are aging in place, meaning they're 55 or up. And we're going to bring someone in soon to talk about our LGBTQ family members that are aging, because they're in crisis mode as it relates to getting services and all of those things. But let me tell you a little bit about our guest today as I slowly admit her from the virtual green room. So Elizabeth Miller has 20 years of corporate information. That means she's from the technology world, from all of us here in California. And she resigned in 2021 to concentrate on helping family caregivers, and that has happened to so many of us, where we've had this drop. And I'm not saying that from a negative place, folks, because we love our family members. We love our spouse. We love our partners. We love our friends. And so we take time to care for them when they need us the most. Just like right now with all this dental work that I've had, my kids have been swarming in, taking care of me, even when I didn't ask for it. So caregiving is a part of our DNA and our humanity, but there's struggles in it because it costs a lot. It takes a lot of time. And particularly women are doing the heavy lifting of it. And I have my thoughts about why we aren't getting what we need, because, okay, so anyway. Elizabeth has a BA journalism degree from Penn State University. She has 8+ years of direct caregiving experience in caring for mom, dad, and mother-in-law. She was also a long distance caregiver for an older brother. And you know how I feel about brothers because I had an older brother that recently passed, and her brother was developmentally disabled. She enjoys traveling. She has an incredible podcast. She's received all kinds of awards. Her personality and my personality are going to jump off of this Zoom because I stalked her last night and found out we are kindreds. And so I want to welcome to Life is a Sacred Journey. And I want all of you to help me welcome to Life is a Sacred Journey, this wonderful, incredible human who is out there trying to help all of us be better caregivers. And I don't even know what that means because, you know, sometimes words flow out because those are the words that we've been given to speak with, because I don't know what being better actually means. I think we're already better, right? We're already better. But she's helping people to move beyond the grief, beyond the stigma, beyond the isolation, to move into this place where they're using the caregiver experience to find self-care, self-hope, and to love themselves with great gratitude. And that's what I got out of her podcast myself. So welcome, Elizabeth Miller to Life is a Sacred Journey. We are honored to have you here.
Thank you. You have a lot of energy for being a Pacific coaster right now. So I am in Atlanta and I'm in awe of your early morning energy. It's fabulous.
Well, thank you so much. You know, I'm doing something I love. That's one of our mantras here at Life is a Sacred Journey, that you have to do something that you love. And many of us in our lifetime go to school, get degrees, get married, and do things for the other, right? For the other, for the world, for the community, what looks good, what feels good to others. Where one of my mantras and what we've adopted here is what feels good to you. And so when someone or yourself was faced with caregiving, the first thing we think is how am I going to do this? And so would you share a little bit about that moment or moments for you and how you got through your how?
Sure. So it wasn't like a particular day that caregiving entered my life. It was basically like a mudslide. You could kind of see it happening and it's coming toward you and you're doing your best to try to mitigate that risk. But at the same time, you're working, in my case, with older adults who have their own, you know, wishes and dreams and thoughts about reality. And you're trying to kind of be in the middle. So my husband and I were dual family caregivers. My parents and his mom, kind of everything came to a head in 2014. We call that our spiral year, because we were spiraling out of control as a family and just like, you know, trying to keep the fingers plugged within the wall. And it was just, we get one thing settled and something else is going. We were sandwich generation caregivers, so raising kids while caregiving for our older adult parents. And we were working full time. We were in the peak of our career and we already had a full plate, right? And then it's like caregiving is heaped on top of it. So it was isolating, overwhelming. I felt lost. I was, you know, inundated with learning. And of course, the tasks and the responsibilities and trying to kind of figure out the roles. I'm one of 6 kids and I have a brother who has needs as well. And we're spread out along the East Coast. So it was, you know, kind of a perfect storm of things happening all at once. And you asked me how I, you know, journeyed through it. It was, I live in Atlanta. My folks had a beautiful home in Florida. And I was doing these drives back and forth from Georgia to Florida with every crisis that was coming up. We thought we were going to lose my mom first and she bounced back. And then my dad suddenly started spiraling very quickly in that summer. And my husband and I both lost a parent in 2014 and my kids lost 2 grandparents that year. And then it was like, oh my gosh, my mom can't live in Florida 6 hours from family. She can't be here on her own. What are we going to do? And so there was definitely a burnout and some things that happened, but there was also this moment that clicked for me when I was driving back and forth on these trips to think these folks that I love are in this situation because of the lifestyle choices that they have made. And if my husband and I don't become intentional about infusing self-care into our daily lives, we are going to replicate the same scenario for our kids. And that was kind of a very bold aha moment for me. And then it was, the Happy Healthy Caregiver stuff, it started differently. It was savvy sandwicher at first. I was trying to figure out how to be savvy in the sandwich generation. And it just became like a game to me of trying on different things and habits to see what would make me feel like I was not losing myself.
Friends, you hear this, right? So it's about that self-care. It's about planning for a future. Remember, we talk about this a lot, where we say, what is it going to look like 10 years from now? I'm in my 60s, so I'm thinking about 10 years from now. I'm thinking about 20 years from now. I'm actually thinking all the way to 110, friends. I keep telling you, I'm going to be here. But to be here, I got to plan for it. I got to plan for it as it relates to, I don't have a spouse, so I have to plan for it. I do have two wonderful, beautiful, absolutely incredible adult children, but guess what? I don't want to live with them.
Yes, of course.
Right?
And you want them to live their own lives and have that freedom. That was something that was really hard for me when when mom needed a lot of my attention. And somebody said to me, Elizabeth, she's already lived this portion of her life that, you were living at that moment, 8 years ago. So you have that right to kind of, be that working woman, be the present mom that you would be, continue to enhance the relationship you have with your husband and your girlfriends. Like it's a lot. And I do believe in my heart that it can be true, that two things can be true at the same time. You can be a wonderful caregiver to somebody, and you can be a happy and healthy person yourself. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here. So.
Well, and Elizabeth, the way we live now is different. I've done a lot of research on caregiving all the way back to when it started, and all, debtors' homes really were convalescent homes because people didn't have places to go. But there came a time when people lived in community, right? We lived in communities that supported caregiving. I remember that, where there was a lady in our neighborhood, and we would all take turns taking her meals on Sunday. Particularly my mom wanted her to have Sunday dinner, so sometimes she sat with us, sometimes I took it to her or my siblings. So, but that's a different world now. We've got neighbors who we don't know. I don't know the neighbors 2 houses down from me. I never see them. I see their house, but I don't see them. So I live in a very different community than I did when I was growing up. And I think that's nationwide, and people are working longer. Moms came out of the household. And so there were more women around to nurture and cater to the children as well as to the community. And now that's not happening. You were a part of a sandwich generation. You got basketball games, track meets. I remember all these things to go to, but then you have the care of a parent. Speak about the sandwich generation sort of situation you were in, and then take it, if you would, to how you think your children actually observe this experience that you were going through.
It's interesting, Michelle, because sandwich generation, just to define in case people don't know, is
thank you.
Yes, you're squeezed between caring for an older adult and caring for children at the same time. And some people are even, club sandwich, right? They've got multiple generations that they're caring for. Yeah. So in our case, our kids were in middle school, and, they did have all their cognitive abilities, nothing, preventing them from being, they were neurotypical kids. So we had to really get intentional, my husband and I, on putting a lot more responsibility on them. They were part of the care team, and it was okay, well, you might not be hands-on of caring for grandmas and grandma and Mimi, but you have a role in this family team that we have here, and your job is school and keeping in touch with all the teacher blogs and the assignments and your deadlines and the paperwork that's necessary. We are not going to be there to kind of cattle prod you through this process. We're here for support, but we're not going to be, checking up on you. And we see that as your job. And they also had to do a lot more responsibilities around the home as far as doing their own laundry. And I had to leave early in the morning to kind of get my self-care in before work. So they had to get themselves on the bus. And so we had to really manage expectations with our kids, and they are capable. It was, there might be some judgment. I know you talk about not judging people, and I love that, because I did feel at times guilty that I wasn't there to kind of make them that hot breakfast in the morning and get them on the bus. But I knew that in my situation, this was my window to infuse this time for myself, whether I was writing or I went to the gym or meditated in the sauna. Like, those were all things that were important to me to kind of feel energized. And the kids did great. And so looking, there were maybe in the 4 years or so of high school, I think they missed the bus once or twice. And I never even knew about it because they took care of it. They called a neighbor they knew was a stay-home mom. She made it happen. She was kind of a backup for me. So it was really proud of them. So they got to college, and my son even said to me at some point, like, Mom, my roommate doesn't know how to do anything. Like, I know how to do stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you hated it at the time, but our job as parents really is to make them independent human beings. And it really forced the issue for us. But looking back, there's a lot of benefits from that. And so I've actually interviewed each of my kids separately on my podcast to kind of get their thoughts on what it was like for them to witness caregiving. Interestingly, my oldest daughter is a nurse. So she's working, and it skips a generation. My mom was a nurse. I fell into IT. She's a nurse in Chicago, working with babies. So she kind of was like, maybe I'm a little burned out on this older adult stuff, but these little babies are fun. And my son is in finance. So we joke, or he's going to be, he's studying finance at the University of Georgia. So we joke that we have really good powers of attorney on both ends, our medical and our financial. So I think it has had a ripple effect. They're compassionate kids. Yep. They're mature. They can have conversations with adults. And I'm just really proud of them.
Elizabeth, I love what you just said, because I come from that same space. Where I think, because I've always been a working parent out of my desire, not so much. Yeah, of course, the money is, I make money. But I do what I love. And because of that, my children have seen me being fulfilled. And when you are a fulfilled parent and you're showing empathy, not sympathy, but empathy, and helping them to see the real world. We're all running around talking about we're woke and we see the truth, but the truth is life does this.
It's messy.
Okay. And yes. The longer you live, sometimes the messier it gets, right? You lose people, you lose your teeth. Because I lost 3 teeth this week. But at the end of the day, there's something, I don't know, I want to call it like your Wheaties thing just builds inside of you, and you become more resilient to the things that happen. And I'm not putting anybody down. Folks, that's not where I live. But when you, as my mother used to say, mollycoddle your children, when you're gone, and there is crisis in their life, they may have a much harder time because they've been protected. And I'm not saying don't protect your children, because I'm a mama bear, and I'm sure Elizabeth is too. But what I'm saying is allow them to make the choices. You see what her kids did when they missed the bus? They picked up the phone and they called for somebody who they knew their mom trusted and had said, call them. And they got to school. They didn't sit there and worry about how I'm not going to get to school. I mean, that's a waste of time. So those things, those values, my friends, not only transfer from raising children, but they transfer for being a happy, healthy caregiver.
Yeah, it's life skills, right? Like these are life skills that they don't teach them in school. They don't teach caregiving in school. Probably should be taught in school, frankly. Like, we're all going to encounter this at some point in our life. And so they're picking up the things from my husband and I, like, they're watching us as we're living. This was a huge chunk of their adolescence, from middle school through high school into college. And I'm still a support caregiver for my brother. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of, sitting down and explaining to them why. It wasn't just like, hey, do your homework and go do your laundry. It was really like, this is what's happening in our life. These are the things that are impacted. Your dad and I really need to also, work out and do the things that are important to us. And we want to have fun as a family. And we can't have fun as a family if we're like spending our weekends doing laundry and picking up after you and all of these things. We want to go to your events, and we're not going to be able to go to all of them, but we're going to go to as many as we can. We might have to divide and conquer. So a lot of those managing expectations, and we just said, we're going to have some fun. And this is how this happens. We're going to plan for the fun by getting the work done. Team Miller, all the way. So they're not perfect. I'm not perfect, but we've kind of, figured it out about managing these responsibilities and putting it together like a puzzle. And it can change, right, from day to day and week to week.
Mm-hmm. And the puzzle is a puzzle that you have to keep reimagining. So even after you put it together, you have to kind of reimagine it, because something might come. In your particular case, I'm not sure if you had to deal with any dementia or Alzheimer's, but just saying, if you have the disability, you have dementia, you have all these things on top,
sure,
that also changes.
All the time. I mean, first it was acclimating mom to the move and grieving the loss of my dad. And then it was, assisted living number one wasn't quite the fit. And that was a whole adoption of roles there. And I think it's a misnomer that there's not a caregiving role for caregivers. If someone's living in the community, there's still a huge role in that case. And so then it was moving to a number two. And then it was the realization that this probably isn't a fit for my mom. She kind of falls in between the skilled nursing and that it was moving her again to live with my sister, and me changing more to a long distance caregiver support role. And then it was, last 2 years of mom's life, she was bedridden and on hospice. And every time I saw her, I thought it was going to be the last time. I probably thought that the last 10 years of her life, frankly, like every time I saw her was the last time I saw her. She had a cocktail of both of them had a cocktail of different things. So, they're greatly missed, but they're still hanging out. You're always, in your heart and in your head.
In here, and we carry them. And I always say there's moments that I sound like my mother. I do things and I'll go, Mom, would you just rest in peace and leave me alone? Because, I remember as a teenager I grew up back east, and I would say, I'm never going to be like you. Well, sometimes I look in the mirror and just hysterically laugh, because I am my mother's child, right? So.
Yes, I'm the good pieces of her, I think. I look like her. So It's kind of scary in a way that I can see that trajectory. And, she could be spiteful at times. She would say, you just wait. You wait till your husband, my mom's first husband died. You wait till your husband dies and your health starts spiraling out of control. And it's, kind of mean, frankly. But I thought, I'm not you. I'm not you in that way. I'm making different choices to be around for a long time. People are stuck with me.
Elizabeth, in your Happy Healthy Caregiving Podcast, we also talk about, and we do here as well, the finding the joy in aging. And I think that we as a society have made aging such an awful thing. I mean, and I don't know why, because you really don't have a choice if you stay alive. And so what happens to people then, they begin to look at aging through the lens of loss. And while there are a lot of losses, there's also some incredible add-ons that happen as you age in place, but you have to embrace that. And so when you made the decision to do the Happy Healthy Caregiver Podcast, tell me what happened. What was your muse? I know the caregiving was, but there had to be something else, because your podcast is fun.
Thank you. Well, it was an intention. I first started writing because writing and journaling has been important to me my entire life. And then the podcast kind of it became an extension. I finally got to use the broadcast journalism stuff that my parents had, paid for with my degree. So writing, it was a way for me to kind of process the emotions. And I first wrote my blog anonymously. I was worried about what my mom would think and this and that. And she was a writer. And I finally kind of talked to her and I said, Mom, I think like a lot of people could really benefit from us putting this. She was proud. And sometimes I didn't say fabulous things about, what was going on, but she was, she listened to the podcast. I have a podcast with my mom, but when she was still alive, she was a huge fan of my journal. She was, proud. There's this, because I wanted other people to have a taste of what, writing and processing and putting some intention on yourself. So it's called the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. And there's like little prompts inside, like that. So but for me, it was like, there's nothing out there for this. I created what I wish existed for me. I did not know about, areas on aging, my EAP, my employee assistance program. I learned many things later in years that I could have used that would have been beneficial. I didn't really have a lot of friends kind of going through the same thing. I'm the fifth out of 6 kids. So maybe, in my genre of people that there was just not anybody really going through that. And I just felt like it shouldn't be this hard. Frankly. Yeah. And so that's where it all started. And then the other part about the podcast is you had asked, the Happy Healthy Caregiver Podcast. So I only interview family caregivers because I believe that they are the experts in family caregiving, and they share their family caregiving experience and lessons learned and what self-care looks like for them, because self-care is not bubble baths and girls' night out and weekends away. It is about managing expectations and setting boundaries and asking for help and making this a sustainable journey so that you can have a sacred life journey ahead of you. Those are the things I think, there's 8 categories of self-care. It's financial self-care, professional, social, spiritual, emotional, practical, and physical. And I think sometimes we get stuck on the physical. We think about working out and eating healthy, but that's just one little piece of it. So
you said something just, Elizabeth, that just is bubbling up in my head, is that it's about what we do here in the inside. It's like that iceberg thing that, we all learned about in leadership training.
Yes.
It's all the stuff under the iceberg that we're trying to help people to see. It's not, yes, if you want to go to the gym, I go to the gym for obvious reasons. I don't want osteopenia and all those things. But when I'm unhappy inside, it doesn't matter what I eat, who I'm hanging out with, how much I exercise, how cute I think I am. None of that. Yeah. It falls apart. Falls apart. And so working on inner self, though, is really hard. And then one of the biggest lessons in my life, Elizabeth, and I share this with you, it's the first time I think I've said it. Nancy, I know you're listening.
Confessions, here we go.
Yeah, confessions, here we go. Nancy Redding, I know you're listening this morning, was asking for help. Because raised in a home or raised in the time that I was raised in, you're supposed to suffer in silence and you're supposed to thrive on neglect. Just keep going. You don't say a word to anybody. People can see something's happening, but when they ask you, you're fine. So there's a whole generation of caregivers, and particularly women, that we have convinced ourselves it's better to look boom than it is to say, you know what, I'm not feeling this today. I can't do this today, because it's a sign of weakness, because we still are such a gender crazy country.
Yeah, I mean, the stats still are that, most women or most family caregivers are women over So that is, and we try to bootstrap it, and that can be a short-term way to get through something, right? Like for a little stint, but it is not a sustainable long-term thing. When you're talking about aging and some of the disabilities with our medication and people living longer, the trajectory of the length of time that you are going to be a caregiver is so much longer. And I think the average is 4.5 years, give or take. 4.5 years, like you keep doing what you're doing for 4.5 years, you're not going to recognize the person that is in the mirror looking back at you. And, I love the analogy about the oxygen mask, but I felt like that one wasn't quite, it didn't speak to me as well, because I felt like it was a one and done crisis. Like it was a moment and I needed something that was a better analogy for like how long-term this is. Yeah. So what my analogy is that I landed on is like caregiving is like feeding a nest of hungry birds. So if I'm the mother robin and I've got my nest of hungry birds, and there's work and there's my kids and there's my husband and my parents and my brother and my relationships, and everybody wants a piece of Elizabeth, and I've got to go feed them all, right? I get a worm and I only have a little bit of time, which is kind of like your energy level, right? You only have a little bit of energy. Who are you going to give it to? How are you going to decide who's going to get that? And, oh, by the way, if I don't feed myself some of this worm, who is going to go and fly and get the food? So yes. So that was kind of like, I just like caregiving is like feeding a nest of hungry birds. I've got to feed myself this worm, or it's all breaks down. So it clicked for me. And I hope maybe that will click for somebody that's out there, because if what you're doing is not sustainable, something has to change, and it cannot be your health and happiness to pay the price, because the whole wheel falls off the car and the whole thing breaks down, the whole system.
That's right. And you can't, I think it was Maya Angelou said, you can't walk on one leg without a crutch. It's like, you can hop for a little while, but then there's going to come the point that you do need a crutch, or you need somebody to help you. And that was so powerful for me, because, because we just think that we can do it all. And, it reminded me of that commercial when I was a kid. I think it was Fabergé or whatever, but, the woman has the baby on her arm with the big, bold collar suit. And the song behind is like, she can go to do the job, bring home the bacon, and then the last was never let him forget he's a man. I was like, But
oh my gosh.
At the end of the day, it showed this woman with a briefcase in her hand. So this was in the 70s, briefcase in her hand, baby on her hip, and then a frying pan. So the baby's on her hip and she's got this frying pan. And this was the image of womanhood. And womanhood is something where, yes, we were made to be maternal. That's a given. Yes. That's a given. And yes, we have, I've seen women have the strength of mighty Zeus when it comes to their children, meaning physical as well as mental and all of that. But it is unfair as a society to think that, because I read earlier to our friends, 60, where was I? Oh, the majority of the caregivers, 82% of all caregivers are female.
Yeah. Okay. So that's even higher than I get 60% work. As 60, well.
Yeah, and work. So
I mean, those images are not helpful to us. And I know for me, one of my mantras in caregiving, that I think it was an Oprah quote. She said, "You can have it all, but not all at once." And that felt good to me, because maybe I could be this person, but not all at the same time. And so when people would ask me, I'm a person who rolls up your sleeves and gets stuff done. And they'd ask me for a new project at work, or, can you volunteer and do this? Or can you show up at school? And I'd say, I'm in a season of my life right now where I am at capacity and I am caring for someone. And that sounds so interesting, but that is just not something I can take on right now. Thank you for thinking of me.
Elizabeth, learn the sentence, no.
No, if it's not a heck yeah or a hell yeah, it's a no. It's a no. And I still have to learn that as an entrepreneur, frankly. Like, I could be doing a lot of different things, but I have to really figure out, like, where are my strengths? How can I pay my bills and still support family caregivers? And it's constantly, figuring that out, adjusting that puzzle, right? It changes.
Yeah. So where can people get your book on Amazon okay.
Yeah.
So
they can get the book on Amazon. That it will be signed if they order it from my website, Happy Healthy Caregiver.
Okay, cool.
So they can order it from either place.
Okay.
And everything, happyhealthycaregiver.com. You'll find the podcast, you'll find the social links, the newsletter, all of that. And yeah, I want to be, the voice that caregivers hear more of, like, you can do it. It's possible. Say no, set your boundaries, ask for help, and don't lose yourself in the process. Oh, and a complimentary coaching session, if that's something that people want.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So a 30-minute complimentary coaching session, because everybody's situation is unique. I don't have all the answers, but I have 2 ears and I will listen to your situation. And if you want some tips and advice, or you want to walk through something, I can make suggestions there. I'm a certified caregiving consultant and a certified senior advisor is a new add-on for me. So I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial planner. I'm a caregiver who understands.
And having those certifications, that means that Elizabeth dug deeper.
Accredited, yes.
Added some other wisdom to her own experience. And I'm not putting, I work here with social workers and counselors and all kinds of folks, and I'm not putting that down. But one of the things that I have noted is having had the experience actually helps to share stories. That's what people always say to me, Michelle, you have such great stories. I said, because they're from my experiences. Whereas, again, not putting social workers, LC, none of that, but
there's a place for everybody. There's a place.
For everybody.
Yes. I do a lot of speaking for employers and different groups. And that one of the things, the feedbacks that I get the most is that people are grateful for those personal stories that I weave into the discussion, because they want hope, essentially, is what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, I'm going to give you a statement, and if you would take it into I love it. I just learned this the other day. Somebody did it to me, so now I'm gonna do it to you.
Do it, because I put people through the lightning round. You totally should put me through this. Yes.
It is, once upon a time, there was a woman named Elizabeth. She started a company, a organization called Happy Healthy Caregiver. And she did many, many things. She had a podcast. She learned all kinds of things. And as she did that, she looked into the future and she thought this.
What I have built has made a difference in family caregivers' lives and will hopefully continue to resonate, so that women and men and everybody who caregiving touches their lives, they will feel happier and healthier from knowing me.
I love that. So yes. Elizabeth Miller is a caregiving expert and coach. She has a podcast, Happy Healthy Caregiving. You can go to happyhealthycaregiving.com.
Caregiver, yes.
Yeah, and get the book from there so you can get it signed. It's nothing like a signed book. I tell you, I love my signed books. And I buy the ones from Amazon so I can give them away after I read the book. But I keep my signed books. And she's also a guest speaker. You can have her come and speak to your organization. And if you're an employer,
yes,
we love our health benefits and all that. But you know what? Happy, healthy employees need more than I'm sorry that's happening to you. I'm just saying. They need more than just a little bit of vacation time, a little bit of bereavement time. They need support. So what if you, employer, big employers, because you're out there, and I know some of you dip in here because I see you. Call Elizabeth and get something happening. Have a lunch hour conversation for your employees online so that they can learn without shame and without thinking you're going to do something to them because you now know something a little bit more personal about them. So they were 2 minutes late one day and now you know they're a caregiver and you use that against them. We got to stop being punitive when people are being human and living a human experience. Elizabeth is also looking for partnerships, not really looking, but she's available for partnerships. So partnerships to do all kinds of things. She and I are going to have to hook up and do something. So all those things, you guys. This woman has taken her life experience and said, I want to be the change in the world. Remember, we talked about that. We've been talking about being the change and not just going, fix it, fix it, fix it. Because even God's not going to fix it if you don't meet God halfway. I'm just saying. So Elizabeth Miller is an incredible new BFF. You know, everybody that comes to, I don't know why this happens, but I now have a cornucopia of friends all over the world because I've met them through this life experience, Elizabeth. And so what would your last words be to our listeners? Not your last words, because you got many more words in you. But your last words to this audience in this moment.
Yeah, you are enough. And you do the best that you can every single day. If you can look in the mirror tonight and say, gosh darn it, I gave it all I got, and I love myself in the process, then pat yourself on the back. And if you're not there yet, with the help of Michelle and myself and other folks and the resources that are out there, we're going to try to get you there.
And that is all that matters, folks. So we're going to end our time. I'm going to ask Elizabeth to stay on because I want to chat with her for 1 minute before she leaves. But as we leave every single Friday morning at 8 a.m., what do I tell you? What do I tell you? The suicide hotline is one of the most important hotlines to me that we need right now in this suffering world. That number is 988. You can text it, you can call it, but do not think that nobody loves you and that the world would be better off without you. Take a chance and call 988, text 988. There's somebody there that will resonate with you and they will reach out to you through that mode and give you one more second to think about what could happen that would be glorious in your life. And I love you, and I would hate to see you not here. Even if I don't know you, the ripple of you taking your life is going to affect me. And it's going to affect everybody because you were magnificently, wonderfully made, and the world just didn't know it, but they're gonna know it. So please, suicide hotline 988, text 988. All right, my good friends, it's sunny right now in California. We don't have rain until Monday, so get outside. Hug a tree. You know how I feel about the trees. Hug a tree. It will tell you many, many wonderful secrets. Pet a cat, pet a dog, because it'll soothe your spirit. And more than anything else, hug yourself. You don't need anybody to hug you. You know why your arms are so long? So you can do this. And you are loved. So have a great weekend, my dear friends. Thank you for coming to Life is a Sacred Journey. You matter to me and you matter to the world. And we are blessed to know you and have you. Peace.